The Ten Commandments. Everybody talks about the Ten Commandments, but if you question somebody and say, can you tell me the Ten Commandments in order, you'd be surprised that the majority of people cannot quote the Ten Commandments. A lot of controversy. There's the Ten Commandments is posted in a lot of public places, but it is a condensed version. It is not a word for word. It ain't the Ten Commandments specifically. It's a shortened version. So what I'm going to do, this won't be a very long video. What I'm going to do is just actually read the Ten Commandments and point a few things out. There's two places the Ten Commandments, well, one version of the Ten Commandments is, and one is in Exodus 20 and the other one is in Deuteronomy 5. So I'm going to read out of Exodus 20 first. It says, no other gods before me. It says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. So that commandment, there's three parts to it. First of all, don't make it. And then it describes what not to make. And then the second part of it, it says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them. And the third part is, nor serve them. So there's three parts. And usually when you read about the Ten Commandments and this particular commandment, that it says don't have any idols and or don't commit idolatry. But it's not specific on how you actually commit idolatry, and this is how. By making a graven image, and it describes what it is that you're making that breaks this rule. Don't make it, don't bow down thyself to it, and don't serve it. So there's three ways that you can basically commit idolatry. You could have not made it, but you bow down to it. You could have not made it or bow down to it, but you serve it. You can say, well, how can you serve a graven image? There's temple worship. There's all kinds of things that you can do in the process of supporting somebody else's idolatry. It says, thou shalt not take the name of thy Lord thy God in vain. The Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Some common phrases you'll hear people say all the time is, oh my God, oh my gosh. It's the same thing. Or they'll say, oh Jesus, or they'll say Jesus Christ, but they'll say it in somebody scares you and you say, oh Jesus Christ. I'm not sure if that's a short prayer or what that is, but basically, was his name Jehovah? Was it Yahweh? If you look at Jews a lot of times, in spelling the word God, G-O-D, a lot of times they'll blank out the O or something just because they're that reverent. Fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. I don't know of any Christians today other than Seventh-day Adventists that actually keep the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. And it says, the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt do no work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, that's a slave by the way, nor thy maidservant, that is a slave by the way, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. So in the what would it be, the unabridged Ten Commandments, we find a few things like God didn't have a problem with slavery, and you don't have to go any farther than the Ten Commandments. Now the reason for keeping the Sabbath, it is described here, and it's not described in the condensed or the abridged portion that people write of the Ten Commandments. And it says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested on the seventh day. Wherefore, or in other words, because of this, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So if you're a New Testament Christian and you're claiming you're not under the law and you don't have to keep the Sabbath, this transcends the law of God. It goes right back to Genesis, where he said, and God rested on the seventh day and hallowed it. and he blessed it. It's the only day out of 7 days, 365 days a year basically, it's the only day of the week that God himself blessed. Sunday's not blessed, Monday's not blessed, as compared to a specific day that God chose for everybody to take a break. Fifth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. That's everybody says that. Oh, you should honor your father and mother. Here's why: that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Now, if you didn't read the rest of the law, you wouldn't understand that. You just say, oh, well, things go better when you honor your parents. Well, if you didn't honor your father and your mother, you would be killed. And that's why it's funny, like in the New Testament, Paul says it's the first commandment with promise. It's because Jesus himself said, he rebuked the leaders and said that God says you're supposed to honor your father and mother, and if you don't, that child was supposed to die to death. Jesus himself said that, and he got mad at them for not following through with that commandment. They wouldn't kill disobedient kids, and Jesus got mad because they did not keep this commandment. And there's three things that a child could die for not honoring his father and mother. One was to curse his father or his mother. That was a death sentence. The second one was striking a parent. In other words, if you slap or hit your parent, death sentence. And the other one, this is more for older children like teenagers and stuff, but if you were rebellious, you didn't listen to your parents, and you were a drunk, death sentence. So you probably didn't know that, but that's what it means by that thy days may be long upon the earth, because the consequences for violating that is death. Thou shalt not kill. Pretty straightforward, you would think. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Now, there's some definitions for adultery, and there's two different standards. First off, you have to understand that adultery is having sex with another man's wife. So if you have sex with a woman who is not married or is not engaged, that is not adultery. You can argue with that, but you will find no place in the Bible where it says that, because it isn't true. You can have concubines, you can have sex slaves, according to the law, according to God. You could have all those things, and multiple wives, doesn't matter. Adultery specifically is having sex with another man's wife. Here's the condition: only if she's free. If she is a slave, it is not considered adultery. Some of you just disagreed with me. It says that if a man has sex with another man's wife, whether she be betrothed or is already married, it says that you are supposed to stone them with stones, and by doing that, putting away evil from among you. The problem is, if you have sex with another man's wife, betrothed or not, and she is a slave, there is no penalty for the man. Zero, nada, zip. The only thing that happens to the woman is she gets beat. So the guy gets off free. The only thing he has to do is offer a sacrifice. The woman gets beat. So there is a double standard there. If adultery was punishable by death, wicked, nasty, horrible, putting away evil from among you, you would think that, slave or not, if you had sex with another man's wife, that the same penalty would be applied, but it isn't. There's a double standard with God. If adultery is evil, wicked, nasty, and rotten, then having sex with a man's wife, whether she's a slave or not, should also be punishable by death, because it should be wicked, evil, nasty, and horrible. Apparently it's not. Thou shalt not steal. Should be pretty straightforward, unless God asks you to commit genocide and plunder the place. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. You will find a lot of times that the men of God lied. They flat out lied. What you weren't supposed to do, though, is you weren't supposed to perjure yourself and bear false witness against your neighbor. In other words, getting your neighbor in trouble in court by lying and perjuring yourself and speaking falsely against your neighbor. Surprisingly, it didn't really prohibit things like, where were you last night? I went to my friend's house. You were partying somewhere. And I'm just bringing, I'm not advocating lying, but I'm just saying that there is a distinction here. And finally, thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Here we go with slavery again. Nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Not his Corvette, not his Bugatti, not his $1 million mansion, not his big screen TV, not his riding lawnmower. It says thou shalt not covet. And that probably, apart from the Sabbath day, is the most violated of the 10 Commandments in the Western world. Covet, it says to yearn to possess or have something. Pretty simple. And synonyms are desire, to yearn for, to crave, to have one's heart set on, to want, to wish for. Oh my God, I wish I had one of those things. Oh man, I'd love to have one. You are so lucky, dude. How did you ever afford? That's covetous. That is covetous. The whole Western society, the economy is built on covetousness. You watch advertising. All advertising is trying to get you enticed. It is trying to get you to covet something you do not have. And it's funny. We went into the store yesterday, and this couple, I doubt they had children. It was a younger couple, and they had everything they were wearing. Just everything was logoed. It was name brand, and it was very popular. Like, they had Nike shoes with the big swoosh. You know, Nike, the symbol for Nike is the swoosh, which is the goddess of victory. So they're running around displaying the image of a false god. And then they have Wrangler, Levi's jeans. With Levi's has a signature. It's hard to miss Levi's pants. Then they had some kind of designer shirts and a sweatshirt. The dude had the latest iPhone hanging out of his back pocket, and they both were walking into the store with Starbucks drinks. And it literally, like, it was the epitome of commercialism and covetousness. You know, Nike shoes aren't any better than Adidas or Reeboks or anything like that, but they're very well known. And Levi's jeans, same thing. Starbucks, everybody's got to show off their $8 drink. I don't even know what to say about that. And, you know, and then the iPhone. The iPhone is not the best phone out there. It is a very nice phone, but it is not the best phone made. Most people buy the iPhone because it's a status symbol. It's just that simple. So, anyways, there's the 10 Commandments, and little background, little detail, and so quick recap. No other gods before him. It's a big no-no. Don't make any graven images. Oh, before I go, I do want to get really specific here on the graven images thing. And then I'll end with that. Just a moment here. Alright, so it says in Deuteronomy 4, take ye good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourself, and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. And unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, should be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God has divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. So, Christmas is one. What do people put on top of a Christmas tree? One of two things. They either put a star or they put an angel. And, you know, dolls, if you go back to Webster's 1828 dictionary, the word for doll, the definition for doll is idolatry. It's an idol. If you go back, Noah Webster produced the first English dictionary, and Noah Webster defines a doll as an idol. If you go into any encyclopedia other than probably, well, maybe Wikipedia, I don't know. That's only as good as the smartest guy in the room. But anyways, if you go back and you look into dolls, the origin of dolls were fertility symbols. They were used in fertility worship. So now they're child's play toys. Whatever. So anyways, 16, almost going to be 17 minutes here. Just a short thing on the Ten Commandments. Hope you enjoyed it.